Oh, rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. Horalu, chieftain of the Badlands, the ever-brilliant Gold Mask, Fear, the deathbed companion, the loathsome dung-eater, and Sir Gideon Othmere, the all-knowing. And one other, whom grace would again bless. A tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between. To stand before the Elden Ring. And become the Elden Lord.
Tarnished! The Tarnished is a versatile and resilient all-rounder who can utilize a wide array of weaponry to challenge their opponents on the field of battle, blending offense and defense in order to secure a victory. At their core, the Tarnished excels at capitalizing on their opponent's openings with a notable amount of burst damage, carefully reading and dancing around their opponent's attacks and checking aggression with a slew of steel and magic-based attacks. But even with such a well-rounded kit, the Tarnished is not without their weaknesses, as is seen through their lack of an offstage presence and the notable slow startup speed of their most powerful attack options. As a Tarnished player, it's your job to keep your opponent on their toes with a huge arsenal of attacks, keeping your attack patterns diverse and using said unpredictability to tear down your opponent's resolve, much like you would in Elden Ring itself. The Tarnished stands as a large humanoid character, standing around the same size as Samus and Snake. Now, for those of you who haven't played Elden Ring, the name Tarnished isn't so much a name as it is a title, a moniker given to the living dead that have either been blessed by or seek grace. As a result, a Tarnished can be any height, any nationality, and either gender, with the armor and weaponry they also use being whatever they desire. You can be a stalwart knight using massive blades, a magic-wielding sorcerer who overwhelms their enemies with magic, a stealthy dagger-wielding rogue who dishes out damage quickly with their blinding speed, or whatever the fuck this is. Despite this, to keep in line with previous Souls protagonists, the look I've chosen for the Tarnished in this moveset is what has been deemed their canonical appearance, which will have them wear the Raging Wolf armor set. However, instead of going with the bastard sword to match the promotional material and playtests, I've decided to go a different direction. You see, one of the biggest changes Elden Ring made to the Souls formula was the way it revamped its magic system, taking what was originally limited use spells and turning them into permanent abilities that the player can use with a special weapon known as a glintstone staff. As a result, it's only appropriate that said magic be a part of their movesets, and I'm not stopping there either. For this moveset, the theme that I plan to use as a base for the Tarnished is cold, and by that I mean cold-themed abilities and magic. Why? Simple, because building a character around both cold and magic is an excellent way for the character to separate their home title from the titles that came before it, where fire has a very large impact on both ability design and story. That, and it allows for me to easily translate said characters into a moveset without taking away anything from the Tarnished. Hint hint, nudge nudge. Let's now talk about the weapons the Tarnished will be using in this moveset, because as is the case with any build, your weapons are the most important thing you have. You know, aside from leveling vigor. In total, the Tarnished will bring 5 weapons along with them into Smash, with all of these weapons belonging to the same group of weapons seen throughout Elden Ring, the Carian weaponry. Carian weapons belong to the members of the Carian royal family, with these weapons having the ability to imbue magic into each of their attacks. These weapons are the Carian Knight Sword, the Carian Knight Shield, the Carian Knight Glintstone Staff, the Dark Moon Greatsword, and the Royal Greatsword, the main weapon used by Blaidd in Elden Ring. Blaidd was originally going to be the one I did a moveset on, so I feel it's only fitting that his weapon makes an appearance in his stead. Rest in peace, you precious bastard. You deserve so much better. These are your tools of the trade, and each one has their own unique attack animations and abilities attached to them, and learning to master them will be the hardest part about playing the Tarnished. It's a lot to manage, and while they're straightforward and easy to understand, picking and choosing which tool works the best in the heat of battle is a challenge in and of itself. In terms of mobility options, the Tarnished has 2 jumps along with the ability to crawl. For their character mechanic, the Tarnished will make use of 3 different character systems from Elden Ring, with these systems changing how the Tarnished deals damage, can take damage, and the uptime of their magical abilities. These are two-handing weapons, poise, and FP. Starting with two-handing weapons, this is an aspect of the Souls series that has been available to the player since its inception, this allowing for the player to swap between holding their weapon with one hand or two, with two-handing weapons increasing the weapon's damage output in exchange for a slower attack speed. This also allows for the player to access their weapon art should they be using a shield or a second weapon, or bypass a weapon stat requirement should they not meet it. In Smash, the player will be able to input shield and B in order to have the Tarnished place their shield on their back and two-hand their Carian Knight Sword, completely changing the weapon's moveset and increasing its damage output. This can be changed at any point by inputting shield and B again, so if you need speed over power, you're never locked into a single option. However, power isn't the only benefit that two-handing your weapon gives you, for it also gives you an additional benefit that just so happens to be the second part of the Tarnished's character mechanic: poise. In the Souls series, poise is a mechanic that will increase your ability to stagger enemies with your attacks, all while also allowing the player to continue attacking even if they're hit by an incoming attack. Heavier armor provides a higher level of poise, which is why it's good to pair slower weapons with more bulky armor, but here in Smash, it's the weapon that will serve as the basis for this mechanic. Normally, the Tarnished will have a set amount of poise that will allow for them to armor through weak, rapid-hitting attacks that they haven't accumulated that much damage. But if they choose to two-hand their weapon, their level of poise will increase, allowing them to potentially armor through an attack to punish with one of their own. Moves that utilize the Tarnished's larger weapons will also have a naturally higher level of poise, while all magic-based abilities provide no poise bonus at all. Speaking of magic, let's talk about the final aspect of the Tarnished's character mechanic: FP. FP can essentially be described as Elden Ring's mana system, allowing the player to access sorceries, incantations, and weapon arts for a set amount of FP each. The player can increase their amount of FP by leveling up, and there's a countless amount of weapons and talismans that can affect your FP in the way it allows you to use your abilities. But here in Smash, it's a simple resource system. In total, the Tarnished will have 100 FP the player can use at any time, with each of their sorceries costing a set amount of FP. This resource will recover naturally over time, but can be recovered quicker by either dealing damage or performing one of the Tarnished's taunts. Those are the basics of the Tarnished and how they bring a small slice of Elden Ring along with them to Smash. So now that you know how they work, let's now talk about the moves that make use of these abilities and move on to their normals. Tarnished's normals will mainly be comprised of attacks using their Carian Knight's sword and shield, along with their access to a wide variety of weapon arts. Several of these attack options will change depending on whether or not the Tarnished is two-handing their weapons, but the damage and knockback of attacks that utilize weapon arts will not change regardless of what option the player is using. The Tarnished's neutral combo is the standard attack combo of the Carian Knight's sword, a sequence of 5 sword slashes that will push the Tarnished forward as they attack. Both the one-handed and two-handed versions of this attack are fairly similar to one another, with one being slightly faster yet weaker than the other. While that's the case, both versions can be cancelled early by holding the shield button between slashes 1 and 3, meaning the player must commit to the combo if they input the 4th attack. The Tarnished's forward tilt is the heavy attack combo of the Carian Knight's sword, a pair of wide-hitting sword slashes that will cover a decent range and deal solid damage. Both versions of this attack can be charged by holding the A button, allowing for the player to deal extra damage and gain extra poise. But overall, this move is a solid counter option to use in the neutral and a great frame trap to use against your opponents near the ledge. The Tarnished's up tilt is Upward Slice, a wide-hitting vertical slash that will hit in an arc above the Tarnished and knock opponents up into the air. This attack is an excellent neutral option thanks to its strength as both a juggling tool and an anti-air option, and thanks to its notable disjoint, it's quite difficult to trade with from above. However, if the player is two-handing their weapon, this attack instead becomes Steel Wind, a powerful vertical slash that goes from back to front, launching the opponent up and in front of the Tarnished. In comparison to Upward Slice, Steel Wind's damage output and kill potential is notably stronger in exchange for a slower startup speed and recovery speed. Despite that, this ends up being one of the Tarnished's safest kill confirms. The Tarnished's down tilt is Hoarfrost Stomp, the first of their many weapon arts that will have them stomp the ground in front of them, creating a pillar of ice that will launch opponents up into the air on contact. In Elden Ring, this ability would create a wave of ice that will deal damage twice, both during the stomp and once the ice shatters. But here in Smash, it has been changed into a single hit attack with a notably larger vertical hitbox, as the original stomp only traveled along the ground. This attack speed will also remain the same regardless of whether or not the player is two-handing their weapon, allowing the player to access this relatively quick attack regardless of how they choose to play the character. The Tarnished's dash attack is Impaling Thrust, a weapon art that will have the player rush forward with their sword extended out in front of them, covering a solid range and dealing some notable damage should it manage to connect. This move's greatest strength is the fantastic shield pressure it provides, which can allow for many a shield break if the player catches an opponent panic shielding in the neutral. And just like Hoarfrost Stomp, this move's speed and damage will remain the same regardless if the player chooses to two-hand their weapon. Further get-up attack, the Tarnished will attack around themselves with either a slash from their sword or a bash from their shield, all while attacking with a straight poke for their ledge attack. For their smash attacks, the Tarnished will bring out their massive Royal Greatsword to really pour on the damage, with all of this weapon's attacks being capable of huge damage numbers in exchange for a very slow startup speed. Colossal weapons are designed to be the epitome of power over speed after all, so it's only fitting that they reflect that here in Smash as well. The Tarnished's forward smash is the Royal Greatsword's heavy attack, an immensely powerful vertical slash that will tear through anything in its path with an incredible amount of force. This attack has a similar appearance to the forward smash that Ganondorf received in Ultimate, with the main difference being that the Tarnished is armored during the attack startup. Looks like Ganon needs to get some higher poise. Overall, this is one of the Tarnished's best kill confirms and a very dangerous attack to trade with, as the weapon's enormous blade counts as a disjoint. But even if you can armor through a potential punish, this move's very slow startup speed won't help you should you miss entirely. For their other smash attacks, the Tarnished will make use of a pair of weapon arts that are designed to mesh well with colossal weapons, so much so that they're often the standard weapon art for larger blades, these being Stamp Upward Cut for their up smash and Stamp Sweep for their down smash. Starting with Upward Cut, this attack will have the Tarnished take a rigid stance before performing a wide-hitting overhead slash to launch nearby opponents high up into the air. During this move's startup time, the initial stamp will provide the Tarnished with a hit of super armor, allowing them to plow through incoming attacks with one of their own. But while that's the case, it's also a telegraph that's very easy to read given the time between the stamp and the slash. As a result, it's important that you aren't too predictable when using this move, should you wish to not get punished. Finally, Sweep will have the Tarnished swing the Royal Greatsword horizontally around them in order to launch nearby foes, with this move's charge animation being made different from Upward Cut so its readability doesn't get too muddy. In comparison to their other options, Sweep is the Tarnished's fastest smash attack by a notable margin, and thanks to the size of the Royal Greatsword, it's also excellent for catching rolls. But even though it's the fastest doesn't make it inherently quick. Whiffing this attack is still a great way to take extra damage from your foes, so don't get too aggressive, because you're definitely not a character that can afford to do so. Tarnished's aerials will make use of their melee weapons to lay the mid-air smackdown on their opponents. While the Souls series' combat has been mainly grounded since its inception, the inclusion of a jump button added a ton of versatility to the way a player can tackle fights, with jumping light and heavy attacks being available for all weapon types. However, despite this great upside that Elden Ring offers in terms of moveset design, some attacks had to be made from scratch to make up for the fact that the Tarnished can only hit in front of and below them when performing an attack. The Tarnished's neutral air will make use of a weapon art to strike all foes around them, this being Spinning Slash. With this, the Tarnished will utilize the Carian Knight's sword and attack in a spinning pattern, hitting multiple times around themselves and launching opponents horizontally. It's a relatively simple attack that's unlike the neutral airs of characters like Marth and Roy, but it's an effective move that will help the Tarnished start combos and land safely. The Tarnished's forward air is the regular jumping attack of the Carian Knight's sword, a wide-hitting horizontal slash that will knock foes back on hit. This move's knockback angle is almost entirely horizontal, making it a great move to use off-screen in order to keep your opponent from coming back. But aside from that, its relatively quick attack and recovery speed make it a reliable attack at nearly any point in the stock. Further up air, the Tarnished will utilize yet another weapon art to strike multiple times above themselves, this weapon art being titled Swords Dance. With this, the Tarnished will spin around in midair with their blade above their head, striking multiple times before the opponent is launched with the final hit. This is one of the Tarnished's best aerial kill confirms thanks to the strength of the overall attack in comparison to its speed, so if you have a chance to score a kill off the top of the screen, don't hesitate to use this move. The Tarnished's back air is Moonlight Cutter, a new attack made just for Smash that will utilize their Dark Moon Greatsword. With this, the Tarnished will turn around in midair and perform a wide horizontal strike with the Dark Moon Greatsword, this powerful blow leaving a sparkling hit trail behind it that will twinkle like stars in the night sky. This is one of the Tarnished's safest kill confirms thanks to its blend of power and range, and if properly spaced, it can be made safe as well. However, landing too quickly with this attack might leave you with a hefty dose of landing lag. Finally, the Tarnished's down air is Royal Execution, an extremely powerful meteor smash utilizing the Royal Greatsword. This move's power matches the meteoric strength of both Ganondorf and Byleth, but this move's strength and reach put it in a league of its own. However, if the player holds the attack button during this move's input, the Tarnished will hold their attack animation until they touch the ground, mimicking the jumping heavy attack used by colossal weapons in Elden Ring. While the attack can be held, this move can only meteor smash during the initial downward swing, with the lingering hitbox simply dealing great damage in exchange for a very slow recovery animation. The Tarnished will grab their opponent using their shield arm, all while performing a knee strike for their pummel. In terms of throws, all 4 of the Tarnished's options are based on weapon arts the player can acquire in Elden Ring, with each attack being designed to push the opponent back on hit. While they might not be the strongest throw options in the game, they're more than enough to make sure the opponent regrets getting within the Tarnished's grab range. The Tarnished's forward throw is Kick, a simple throw with a simple name that says it all, as the Tarnished will drive their foot into their opponent's chest, knocking them back a decent distance and dealing average damage. This throw is mainly designed to create distance and set up an offstage kill, but aside from that, it's a fairly average throw. The Tarnished's up throw is Spinning Launcher, a combo attack utilizing the weapon art's spinning weapon and an upward slash from the Carian Knight's sword. With this, the Tarnished will spin their sword out in front of them, dealing rapid damage and knocking the opponent off the ground before performing a leaping attack to send their opponent soaring. In terms of launch power, this is the Tarnished's best throw, as it can be used to confirm kills at higher percents, but it also sports the benefit of damaging other nearby opponents with the spinning weapon, making it a great throw to use in matches with more than 2 players. The Tarnished's back throw is Lifesteal Flip, a 1-2 attack combining the weapon art Lifesteal Fist and the Royal Greatsword. With this, the Tarnished will drive their fist into their opponent's chest, absorbing a bit of their energy before flipping them over their back with the Royal Greatsword. This throw being the Tarnished's highest damaging throw option and a decent kill option at higher percents. But what really sets this throw aside from the others is its ability to recover a decent chunk of the Tarnished's FP gauge on hit. Because of this throw has uses at any point in a match, and the damage it adds onto your opponent only makes it all the more enticing. Finally, the Tarnished's down throw is Ground Slam, this move having the Tarnished leap up into the air before coming down rear first, bouncing their opponent off the ground and up into the air. Yes, you heard that right. This is an ability that uses your behind as a weapon, and while it's not a move that's seen as practical, it's still one that's fun to use simply for the concept alone. In Smash, this throw can be used as a combo throw at low to mid percents, giving you plenty of opportunities to use this comical attack. We've now made it to the Tarnished specials, and this is where we get into the main attacks the Tarnished can utilize with their Carian weapons. Out of all of the Tarnished's tools, these are the ones that will be both the most important in your combat structure and take the longest to master, but rest assured that they're very effective at all levels of play. Starting with the neutral special, the Tarnished will put their mastery over magic on full display, unsheathing their glintstone staff and gaining access to sorceries. In total, the player can make use of 5 different spells, with these being Freezing Mist, Glintstone Ice Crag, Magic Glint Blade, Cannon of Haima, and Carian Retaliation, each spell having their own set FP cost and uses in a fight. By holding the B button, the player will cause a drop-down menu to appear next to their percent bar, with all 5 spells being listed on it. The player can then choose which spell they wish to use by moving their analog stick, and once they've made their decision, pressing the B button will close the menu and have the Tarnished use the spell in question. This spell will be registered until the next time the menu is brought up again, allowing for the player to use the spell multiple times in a row by tapping the B button in succession. Now, let's talk about how these spells work, starting with the first option, Freezing Mist. Freezing Mist is a spell that's mainly designed around area denial, this having the Tarnished release a wave of icy frost that will linger in the air. Any opponent that stands within this mist will take damage over time, but if they stay within the mist for more than 3 seconds, they will be stricken with a debuff that will cause them to take extra damage, mimicking the same effect Freezing Mist does to enemies in Elden Ring. In total, Freezing Mist will stay active for 6 seconds before it dissipates, and will cost 30 FP to use. And if Freezing Mist is cast again while one is active, the active mist will instantly dissipate, preventing the player from filling the screen with this attack. Glintstone Ice Crag is the most straightforward of the Tarnished's spell options, this move having the player launch an ice-coated glintstone blast from the end of their staff that will travel in a straight line, shattering upon contact with either an opponent or after traveling a set distance. This move can be fired several times in a row if the player rapidly taps the B button, and if the opponent is hit by 3 of these projectiles in a row, they'll become frozen and left open to even more potential damage. Each shot of Ice Crag will require 10 FP to cast, so make sure you make those shots count. Magic Glint Blade is a delayed projectile that will have the Tarnished summon a sword over their shoulder, this blade taking a few seconds to form before homing in on the closest opponent. This spell will act independently from the Tarnished after the initial summon animation, allowing for the player to move around and attack while the spell builds energy. As a result, this move can be used as both a combo extender and combo ender, as it can be used to confirm kills against offstage opponents. Each Glint Blade will require 20 FP to use, with the player being able to summon up to 3 Glint Blades at a time. Cannon of Haima is an immensely powerful projectile attack that will have the Tarnished charge up magic within their staff, all before lobbing a ball of magic forward. This ball will explode once it comes into contact with either an opponent or the floor, dealing huge damage in an area of effect. This spell packs the most punch compared to the Tarnished's other options, but in return, it's both the slowest on startup and the spell that requires the most FP to use, with each shot taking 40 FP to fire. Thanks to this, Cannon of Haima isn't an attack you can throw out haphazardly, so it's best to save this attack for when you have your opponent in a pinch, such as trapping them at the ledge or catching them off stage with the move's unorthodox launch angle. Finally, Carian Retaliation is a counterspell that will absorb incoming projectiles, turning their energy into a trio of glint blades that will then home in on and damage the opponent that launched the projectile. This move's damage will vary depending on the damage of the projectile it absorbs, all while having a relatively low FP cost of 10 per cast. But what pulls this move apart from a majority of the other reflectors in Smash is the fact that this reflector must be properly timed, as the reflect window is only 5 frames wide. On top of that, Carian Retaliation is only capable of absorbing a single projectile, meaning that characters with multiple projectiles can exploit this attack and turn it into an easy punish, so it's best to be careful. Carefully balancing your FP will take a bit of getting used to when starting out, but it's important to remember that FP can be recovered quicker by dealing damage with your melee attacks. As a result, sitting back and relying on your projectile options to deal damage isn't a tactic that will last forever, so be sure to mix offense with defense for the best results. Moving on to their side special, the Tarnished will make use of the weapon art exclusive to the Dark Moon Greatsword, Elden Ring's take on the most iconic weapon in FromSoft history, this move being titled Moonlight Greatsword. With this, the Tarnished will raise the sword above their head, its blade beginning to glow like the night sky as it becomes imbued with the power of frost. Once the blade is filled, the Tarnished will perform a vertical slash, this causing the sword to emit a blast of moonlight that will travel forward in a straight line and deal damage to the first opponent in its path. This projectile is immensely powerful, its priority allowing it to contend with the projectiles of characters like Samus and Sephiroth. But if the player is willing to spend a bit of their resources, they can make it even more powerful. By holding the B button during the attack's initial startup, the Tarnished will continue to build magic within the weapon, with the glowing blade becoming brighter as it's charged. This charge will consume 15 FP from the Tarnished's FP gauge, but in exchange, the priority, speed, and damage of this attack will become far greater than that of its original version. Just keep in mind, however, that the Tarnished has no armor while charging the attack, so it might be safer to simply go with the regular version of this move. It should also be mentioned that Moonlight Greatsword's projectile cannot be absorbed by Carian Retaliation, so if your opponent has a reflector, it's advised that you be careful. Moving on to the recovery special, the Tarnished will bring out the Royal Greatsword and make use of its exclusive weapon art, one that truly befits its former wielder. Wolf's Assault. With this, the Tarnished will leap through the air, maneuvering the massive blade around in the air before plunging towards the ground sword first. Once the sword digs into the ground, the Tarnished will cause the blade to release an explosion of frost around themselves to launch nearby foes away. Overall, this attack can deal heavy damage, both from the initial dive and the frosty explosion that follows afterwards, and there's a very good chance that the opponent will be locked into the second hit if they manage to get hit by the move's initial dive. However, while Wolf's Assault's power is great, its recovery distance is a bit lacking compared to attacks like Ice Aether or Cloud's Climb Hazard, with its recovery angle being more horizontal than vertical. Thankfully, this move is fully armored, meaning that the Tarnished cannot be knocked out of it until they either touch the stage or fail to catch the ledge and kiss the blast zone instead. But the time it takes for the Tarnished to recover might make it a dangerous attack to land with, especially if your opponent predicts the second attack. Long story short, aim for the ledge, or don't aim at all. Moving on to their down special, this is a unique option that will change depending on whether or not the player is two-handing their weapon. If the player is one-handing their weapon and their shield is equipped, this move will be parry, but if the weapon is two-handed, it instead becomes Carian Grandeur. Starting with parry, this is an ability that any fan of the Soulsborne series will know all too well, regardless if you mastered it in the Souls series to excel in PvP or you learned it in Bloodborne because it was your only line of defense. And thankfully, that knowledge will translate over to Smash, as the ability works the exact same as it does in the actual Souls titles. With this, the Tarnished will perform a deflecting swipe with their shield arm, and if this move is timed with an incoming attack from their opponent, the attack will be cancelled and the opponent will be stunned for a brief moment, referencing the way parries would poise break enemies in the Souls series. Poise breaking is a mechanic in which enemies would enter a knockdown state after taking a set amount of poise damage or their attacks have been parried, although some enemies take multiple parries in order to poise break. Once their poise has been broken, the player is capable of performing an extra attack to deal heavy damage. This is the second half of the Shields Down special, Riposte. With this, the Tarnished will run their opponent through with their sword, dealing enormous amounts of damage before they pull their sword out, launching their foe away from the impact. This is the Tarnished's strongest attack, its damage and knockback making it almost like an alternative version of Ridley's Skewer. However, Riposte works more like a command grab, as the opponent cannot escape the attack once they've been stunned. Riposte can also be used against opponents that have had their shield broken, so long as the player has their shield equipped, giving this move extra utility that can mesh well with the Tarnished's high damage kit. But don't let that deter you from never using the other down special, as it can also pack a punch. Speaking of which, Carian Grandeur is a powerful physical attack that will have the Tarnished utilize the weapon art of the Carian Knight's sword to cut through their opponent's defenses. This embodiment of Carian royal prestige being able to take down multiple opponents with a single blow, should you properly time it. With this, the Tarnished will raise the blade above their head, channeling magical energy into the weapon and causing it to transform into a magic greatsword. This vibrant blue blade will grow in size for each of the weapon's 3 charge states, and once the player releases the B button, the Tarnished will bring the blade down and slash through all opponents in the blade's range. This attack's damage is immense, especially if the player manages to charge it all the way to its maximum level, but it should be mentioned that this attack cannot be stored for later use, so if you want to perform this attack, you need to commit to it. Thankfully, there's no FP requirement to perform this attack, so the only resource you need to make this attack work is good timing. Next is the final smash, and initially, I wasn't sure how I wanted to handle this attack. Elden Ring, and the Souls series as a whole, is pretty grounded in terms of its attack structure, with there being a notable lack of big bombastic attacks that can serve as a big final attack, especially since most final attacks in the Souls series are careful blows made by reading your opponent's movements. However, I think I might have found not just the best possible final smash for the Tarnished, but the best final smash a character from the Souls series could ask for.
O gathering of champions! The revels begin! The celebration of war! The Return Festival!
to the celebration of combat. For what was once an honorable last battle for a legendary warrior has now become the Tarnished's final smash. This is the Festival of Combat. To start the attack, the Tarnished will let out a triumphant roar, all before performing Horalu's Earthbreaker, an ash of war that can be obtained by besting Horalu in combat. This massive attack will rupture the ground and cause an immense shockwave to rocket up from below, knocking all opponents in its path up into the air and into the cinematic final smash. At this point, the Tarnished will summon a series of mighty warriors to battle at their side, namely the summons the players can call upon during the Radahn boss battle, including notable characters like Alexander the Warrior Jar, Patches, and Blythe the Half-Wolf. After being summoned, the warriors will rush towards the caught opponents, unleashing a flurry of attacks from their weapons, including bloody katana slashes, summoning spirits of the dead, flaming uppercut punches, and Patches sitting in the back and doing nothing as Patches does. To conclude the final smash, both the Tarnished and Blythe will perform a combo attack together with their royal greatswords, launching all caught foes away as the summoned warriors return to their worlds. Again, since Blythe was originally going to be the one I did this moveset on, I feel it's only fitting that he gets a big role in this moveset's design. The Tarnished's victory theme is the ending riffs of the Elden Ring title screen theme, all while mixing in the triumphant jingle that plays once the player defeats a boss in Elden Ring. A triumphant victory theme for what was truly a taxing fight. Animation number 1 will show the Tarnished resting at a site of grace, all before Melia appears next to them, congratulating them on their victory. At this point, she will sit next to them and the two will silently converse with one another. Victory animation number 2 will have the Tarnished call upon their trusty steed, Torrent, all before the two of them rush off into the distance together. While I didn't find a suitable place for Torrent to appear in the moveset, having them make an appearance here as a victory animation feels like a suitable compromise. Finally, victory animation number 3 will show the Tarnished sitting upon the throne of the Elden Lord, referencing one of the game's many endings and the role they take up after slaying the Elden Beast. It's a simple victory animation, but for those that have beaten the game, there's no greater reward than the end of a long journey. The Tarnished's taunts will make use of the many gestures the player can perform in Elden Ring, with a lot of these gestures also being maintained throughout the Souls series. As a matter of fact, the Tarnished has 4 basic taunts and an extra taunt that can be accessed by inputting a special sequence of buttons. The Tarnished's first taunt is known as Welcome, this having the Tarnished take a step forward with their arms outstretched. This is an example of an emote that has been around since the series' inception, and is often a taunt used by players before they engage in PvP, which is fitting since Smash is nothing but PvP. The Tarnished's second taunt is Point Down, another PvP-centric taunt that will have the Tarnished point towards their feet. It's a simple taunt that can be used to imply a variety of things, so use however you see fit. The Tarnished's third taunt is Bow, a gesture the player automatically receives in Elden Ring that will have the Tarnished perform a bow towards their opponent. This is used by a variety of NPCs before you fight them in Elden Ring, along with it being another taunt that's often used by players in PvP, so show your opponent some respect with a bit of courtesy. The Tarnished's fourth taunt is known as the Ring, a gesture that the player can use from the beginning of the game should they have pre-ordered Elden Ring. It's a simple taunt that will have the Tarnished raise their arms up over their head, slowly forming a circle, and it sadly doesn't get used that much. Thankfully, it can now be the last thing your opponent sees before you both go to the results screen. Finally, by inputting down taunt 3 times in quick succession, the Tarnished will perform their secret taunt, thus having them pull out a flask of cerulean tears and take a drink. When this taunt is completed, the Tarnished's FP gauge will be filled back to 100%, giving this taunt some actual use in the Tarnished's game plan. But do keep in mind that the Tarnished can only perform these taunts 3 times in a single match. Not stock, match. If the Tarnished tries to use this taunt again after drinking all 3 cerulean flasks, they will instead perform a unique animation showing them try to drink before noticing the ball is empty, an animation that plays when the player is out of flasks in Elden Ring. It's important to pick your moments to drink carefully, as your opponent won't stop and wait for you to finish the animation. Further colors, the Tarnished will show off several of the many armor sets the player can access in Elden Ring, with each color giving them a completely unique appearance. Despite this, their weapons and poise will remain the same regardless of which armor set the player chooses. Color number 1 is the standard appearance of the Tarnished, this being the Raging Wolf set. This has been dubbed the canon appearance for the Tarnished, and as a result, it's only fitting that this be the default appearance for the character, much like you'd expect the Chosen Undead from Dark Souls 1 to wear the Elite Knight set. Color number 2 will have the Tarnished don the Knight set, a basic set of armor that the player can purchase from the Twin Maiden Husks as soon as they arrive at the Round Table Hold. This is a fairly decent starting armor thanks to its high defenses and poise, but it quickly gets outperformed by other sets around the midway point of the game. Color number 3 will have the Tarnished don the Carian Knight set, a set of armor that can be acquired from the Academy of Rea Lucaria. This armor is designed to go in tandem with the Carian Knight weapon set, which is probably why it provides such high resistance to magic damage. Color number 4 will have the Tarnished don the Crucible Axe set, this set of armor being used by the dangerous Crucible Knights you will encounter on your journeys in the lands between. In total, the player can gain access to 2 different types of Crucible Knight armor, with this one being based on the set used by the Crucible Knights that wield a sword and shield. Color number 5 will have the Tarnished don the Fingerprint set, a set of armor used by the Warrior Vike in Elden Ring. This set was used in several articles promoting the game, and just so happens to be the armor set seen on the cover of the box. This armor can be earned by defeating Vike in the Lord's Contender Everjail in the mountaintops of the Giants. Color number 6 will have the Tarnished don the Tree Sentinel set, armor worn by the nightmarish Tree Sentinel seen throughout Elden Ring. Remember that giant knight on the golden horse at the beginning of the game? Yeah, this is what he wears. Now you get to be the thing that made a lot of people quit the game. Color number 7 will have the Tarnished don the Knight's Cavalry set, a set of jet black armor worn by the Knight's Cavalry bosses seen throughout Elden Ring. These terrifying enemies only appear at night in specific locations, and they can use one of 2 different weapons. Finally, color number 8 will have the Tarnished don Blaidd's set, including his full set of armor along with the Black Wolf's mask. You can consider this another reference to Blaidd being the original contender for this moveset, and in order to acquire this set, well, I'm sure I don't need to tell you. You deserve better, Blaidd. You really did. When it comes to adding a Soulsborne character to Smash Bros., concepts have been floating around the internet since Dark Souls' release all the way back in 2011. Plenty of characters have been talked about in this regard, and as the series evolved and new games came out, new names have been added to this group of supposedly possible candidates, with the latest coming in the form of the Tarnished from Elden Ring. Now, Elden Ring is a huge deal right now, an absolutely phenomenal gaming experience that has felt like a once-in-a-decade release. Even in the years to come, this is a game that will be remembered and held on a pedestal for the amazing things it did right. As a result, requests for characters like the Tarnished to become playable in other games like Smash Bros. Is going to remain alive for a while, and thanks to the popularity Elden Ring received, requests for other Souls characters might also begin to pick up steam as well. It's something I'd love to see, and let it be known that the Tarnished will not be the last Souls character you see from me this year. There's plenty more for me to delve into. Heroes of past games to talk about, long-lost warriors revered in legend. Perhaps it isn't even the last you've seen of Elden Ring. There's several characters that could serve as notable fighters. And hell, if the interest is there, perhaps Blaidd can still get his own moveset in the future. Whatever happens, let it be known that Soulsborne characters in Smash is a fantastic idea and is a concept that more people should definitely support. I've been Felicia Fan, and thank you for watching.